Good evening, everyone. Normally, our chair would read the preamble this evening, but I'm going to read the preamble as she's a little bit under the weather, and we're going to save her breath tonight. So bear with me. Welcome to tonight's Committee of Adjustment meeting. This is a meeting to consider applications for minor variance and consents held under the authority of the Planning Act of Ontario. The role of the committee is to review the proposals that are before it, consider the evidence provided, and make a decision based on the 4 tests established by the Planning Act. In order to conduct an effective and efficient hearing, we've adopted the following process. Tonight's meeting will be live streamed and available for future viewing on the town's live stream page, oakville.ca/live. People attending this committee meeting are to be courteous and respectful of the members of the committee, town staff, and others in attendance. We ask that cellular devices be switched off or to mute at this time. All remarks and questions are to be directed to the chair on my left. All persons wishing to address the committee are required to provide their name and address. A maximum of 5 minutes will be provided to all speakers. Any submissions beyond the 5 minutes will be at the discretion of the chair. Any materials presented to the committee for viewing will remain the property of this committee. Persons seeking a deferral or withdrawal of an application will be invited to do so at the onset of the meeting. If a request for a deferral is granted, it is the responsibility of the applicant to contact the Secretary-Treasurer regarding the scheduling of a new hearing date. At the request of the committee, the applicant may be asked to provide a brief presentation and answer any questions that may arise. If the applicant has any concerns with the recommendations and proposed conditions found within the staff's report, this is the time to advise the committee. All persons who wish to support or oppose the application will then be given an opportunity to speak to the committee. In the interest of efficiency, groups sharing the same view are asked to select a spokesperson, and individual speakers are asked not to cover the same points as those who have already spoken. The applicant will then be given an opportunity to respond to the comments made by any interested parties and answer any additional questions of the committee. Discussion will then be closed, and the matter will be taken into committee for a decision. Once the committee has made an oral decision, any person desiring a written copy must file with the Secretary-Treasurer a written request for notice of decision. A green sheet is provided on the table at the back of the room for this purpose, and only those filing such a request will be given any subsequent notice of any appeal. Notice of the committee's decision will be mailed to the applicant and anyone who filed a written request not later than 10 days following the decision for minor variance and 15 days for consents. If you do not agree with the committee's decision, you may appeal the decision to the local planning appeal tribunal. The last day to appeal will be noted on the decision. If no appeal is received within the prescribed time frame, the decision of the committee becomes final and binding. The applicant and anyone who received a copy of the decision will then be notified by written correspondence. Thank you, and I'll turn it over to the chair.
Thank you, Ms. Murray. I appreciate that. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We have no regrets this evening. Do I have any declaration of pecuniary interests? I see none. Thank you. At this time, I will be taking requests for deferral or withdrawal of any applications. So if you would like to defer or requested withdrawal of your application, this was the time to do so. I see none. Oh, you do? Okay. Go ahead. Your name and address for the record and the application that you're here for, please.
My name is Michael Barton. My address is 1489 Abbeywood Drive. I'm here for 342 Spruce Street. So we have reviewed the comments regarding the design of the home and the character of the neighborhood. So we are seeking a deferral to discuss with staff and see what changes we can make to address those concerns. So we intend to come back to the committee as soon as possible with those.
Okay, very well. Thank you very much, Mr. Barton. Just allow me one moment to canvass the room to see who is here in attendance for application CAV 121 of 2019 at 342 Spruce Street. Show of hands, please. Okay, as you've heard, the applicant is requesting a deferral. We appreciate you coming out. However, if the committee so chooses to grant us deferral, this will be in your benefit, as they are going to be working with town staff, and there will be changes to the application, and you will get notification of those changes. Mr. Barton, if you just take a look, can I see the show of hands, please? Okay, so perhaps on your way out, you can address any questions or take any comments from the neighbors. We usually, encourage that. Okay, members, I'm in your hands. The request for deferral, all those in support? Okay, your deferral has been approved. And the next deferral date is October the 22nd. If you aren't able to make the deadlines for that date, you will see the Secretary Treasurer for the next available date. Okay. Anyone else that would like a deferral or withdrawal of the application? Okay, I see none. Moving on with the first item on our agenda tonight is CAV 018 of 2019 at 1250 Lakeshore Road.
Good evening,
Good
Madam
evening.
Chair, members of the committee. My name is Joris Kieran, and I'm acting agent this evening for this file. The agent that should be here, Rick Meteljan, he's away on a family emergency, so he asked me to present this tonight.
Very well, thank you, Mr. Kieran. Allow me to canvass the room, please. Who is here for application CAV 018 of 2019 at 1250 Lakeshore Road East? I see none. Okay. There's a hand. You have to raise your hands high enough for me to see. So is there?
The owner.
Oh, the owner, okay. Anyone here who is in interest or in opposition of the application? I see none. Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Kieran. This is a historic heritage application and proposed extension.
That's correct. There has been a last-minute change to one of the variances as a result of accommodating the neighbor immediately to the west, the adjoining neighbor. The Secretary Treasurer is aware of this change, and the site plan has been amended, and I've a few copies of that site plan for her.
So if you can just take us through the change then?
Yep. I'm just going to try to get the, I'm going to keep one. The small adjustment that's been made is pertaining to this setback dimension here, which in the original application that's in front of you is 0.8 meters. And at the request of the neighbor, that was increased to 1.3 meters to accommodate, access for maintenance, et cetera. So that was made today, and we're submitting that updated plan. So that variance will be slightly altered from what's being applied for. The other variance, 2.07, is remaining the same.
Okay. So the interior side yard is now, instead of 0.80, it's 1.3.
3.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a little bit small on there, but it's
Yeah.
there.
Are there any questions of Mr. Kieran, items of clarification? We have a question for staff. Ms. Murray, go ahead. Mr. Hassan.
Through you, Madam Chair, to town staff. Does town staff have any comment on these late-breaking changes?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, I wasn't aware of the changes that would be made, but based on the reduction or increase in the setback, I don't believe I see any issues aside from what the staff comments indicate, so.
Yeah, you were in support of the application as a whole. Okay. Any other questions or items of clarification? I see none. Mr. Kieran, if you're satisfied with I'm assuming the conditions still stand as they are, but we are going to amend the drawings. So, right? Just the site plan, yes. So it will, instead of the elevation drawing stated? So we're staying with the June 27th elevations, or? Sorry.
Yes. You're wondering about the drawings?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'd like to submit this site plan, and there would be a small change to the rear elevation drawing as well, because the porch is about 2 feet smaller now. I do not have that drawing this evening. It's very minor. We didn't think it would really affect much, but I can submit an updated drawing to the Secretary Treasurer in a few days if necessary to amend the record.
You're a veteran at this, so you know that we don't like to approve variances without the attached drawings and dated drawings, right? So,
Yeah, I wasn't provided that drawing today, so it's a little bit out of my hands, but I'm asking, because it's so minor, I'm asking that the committee make an exception. Rick can't be here because of he had a death in the family, so that had something to do with this not being available today.
okay. Mr. Hassan, I'm going to defer to you in terms of how you'd like this condition reworded. If we're going to approve it tonight, I'm still going to open it to discussion, but I would like to know how you'd like this reworded.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, we could date the site plan dated today's date, September 24th, 2019, and then the elevation drawings could be to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning Services, just so we can ensure that they're aligned.
Okay. So you got that? Okay. Are there any questions or items of clarification? Okay, if we're satisfied with that, then we can take the matter into committee. Mr. Kieran?
Yeah, it's only the rear elevation. The other 3 elevations will remain exactly the same, so I'm not sure if you want to make that distinction, if that helps. There's no changes occurring to the other elevations, so it's only the rear elevation page.
I think it's just because out of simplicity, if nothing else is changing, then shouldn't affect you, and we'll just leave it at that. And
Okay.
it's all on record anyway, so Mr. Hassan and Jasmina are aware.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. Anything further? Okay, we're taking this matter into committee now. Who would like to move a motion? Okay, go ahead, Ms. Murray. Thank you.
Madam Chair, having conducted my site visit, reviewed the applicant's written submission as well as the town's written staff report, which I note that the staff is in support of. Also having taken into account the comments and changes presented by the applicant this evening, and noting that there were no written or oral objections from the gallery at this time, I am satisfied that the minor variance application meets all 4 tests under the Planning Act. I'm prepared to make a motion to approve the application for variance subject to the following conditions: that the semi-detached dwelling and additions be permitted and built in general accordance with the site plan dated September 24th, 2019, and the elevation drawings to be presented to town staff to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning Services.
And then the second.
And the second, that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction, and in cases where a building permit is not required, the proposed scope of the work has not been fully completed.
Okay, very well. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay. The application has been approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so the next item on our agenda is application CAV 106 of 2019 at 1540 Reeves Gate, Unit 20 and 19. Good evening.
Good evening.
You're
My
in-
name is Albert Graves. I'm the owner of the unit 1540 Reeves Gate, unit number 20. Beside me is Rebecca. She is the daughter of the owner of unit 19.
Sorry,
Last name for the record is Phillips, Phillips.
Phillips. And Mr. Graves, thank you. Who is here for application CAV 106 of 2019 at 1540 Reeves Gate, Unit 19 and 20?
That's us.
Okay, show of hands, please. Okay, are you here in support or in opposition? Opposition. Would you like to address the committee, or are you here for to obtain information? Very well. So, Mr. Graves and Ms. Phillips, would you please take us through your application and your presentation, and then we'll invite the neighbors to address the committee, and we'll take it from there.
Sure, thank you. This whole case for us is a little bit of a confusing scenario. We would like to explain a little bit quickly on what happened. I've been owning the unit since 2002. For many years, I stayed in the unit, and I was always envying a nice little balcony or deck behind my unit. Never knew that I could do it since we were in a condominium townhouse unit. However, once I was in the committee, part of the committee of the townhouse committee, under Section 98, I found out that I could add a deck. The first thing that I did was go to the town of Oakville, got an application for a deck. I went with that, created that application, took that application to a builder. The builder got a drawing done by an architect, and we filled it all out according to the specifications. The unit is 18 feet wide, so I wanted an 18-foot deck. I can go up to 10 feet deep, so I went to a 9.5-foot deck so that I had a little bit 6-inch variance. After that was all done, I went back to the town of Oakville, paid for the permit, got approved pretty much within like 2 months or so. I took that approval with me to the committee of the townhouse committee, and they said, no, we don't like this one for the very simple reason that it's 18 feet wide. If your neighbors would want one, there would be an issue that they're against each other, so can you do it for 16 feet? So I did one for 16 feet. I had to pretty much go through the whole application again. Architect had to change it. It had to go back to the town of Oakville. I had to reapply to a 16-foot deck. And after that, it was pretty much quickly done. So I twice got a permit. Once I had that permit, I went to my neighbor, Jacinta Snyder, and Jacinta said, I want the same thing. So Jacinta actually pretty much did everything that I had to do, and within 4 to 6 weeks had her permit. And this was all in 2017? 2016. So pretty much August 2016, the decks were built, all within the specifications that they had to be, and everything was happy. Until 14 months later, 15 months later, I got a phone call from the township that there was an issue with the deck. And I'm like, well, I don't know what to say. So I came by, I talked to a gentleman here, and we pretty much talked about it, and he said, well, the best thing for you is to go through this committee, which, of course, I just don't want to cause any trouble, so let's do this committee. But now, a year later, we have created a whole bunch of troubles, and I don't really know why. So do you have anything to fill in?
Other than the fact that the decks were built according to specifications of 3 permits that were approved by the town, 2 of which were for the less width, which we discussed, that 16. And they were built in accordance. We did have inspectors that did come out and actually were watching the entire process and had no issue up until this November of 2017 incident came up with the telephone call. So we have built it under the assumption of which the town has provided and built it according to the permits upon which we are relying upon the town's approval in those permits, because we're relying on their expertise to understand the bylaws and to tell us whether or not we are meeting specifications. And so we built according to those permits, 3 of which were given by the town.
So really, the issue as of this moment right now is that according to the bylaw, I think we're allowed to have a 5-foot deck behind the unit. The deck that we applied for and that we actually got is 9.5 foot. So we're talking a 4.5-foot difference. And that's pretty much it. It's, you know, at this particular point, we don't really know what to say. We don't really know what to think. Love to answer some questions.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Graves and Ms. Phillips. Are there any questions or items of clarification at this time? I see none. Okay. We'll invite you to take a seat. We'll hear from your neighbors, and then you'll be given the chance to respond to your neighbors' concerns, and we'll take it from there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Talowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Maybe at this time it would be appropriate to ask the obvious question of
Yes,
staff.
I think we all want to ask that question, so Mr.
Mr.
Hassan, you're up.
Can you help us with what appears to be the town issuing a permit that wasn't in compliance with the bylaw?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, my understanding was that when the applications for building permits were applied for, the drawings depicted a deck, based on my understanding through discussion with zoning staff, the interpretation was that the basement was a walkout condition, noting that the front of the facade would have been a 2-story and the basement level would not be counted as a story, therefore the structure being considered as a deck, whereas going out through the inspection process, the building would be 3 stories, factoring in that the structure would then be considered a balcony, hence the need for the variance itself. So essentially, it'd be the information that was provided through the building permit plans that zoning staff signed off on through the building permit process.
But in essence, if you're not in support of this application, so in essence, if what you're asking us is to what, tear it down after the fact, I'm a little lost here.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, it is kind of an awkward situation for planning staff to comment on the application, noting that permits were issued and signed off on, and now there's variances being applied for after the fact. So.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Are there any further questions? Mr. Flemington? Oh, go ahead.
One more question to clarify the process, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
Through you to town staff. So the permit was issued without a site inspection? And then but there was, it's my understanding there was a site inspection after? And they didn't identify at that time that it was a challenge, non-compliant with the bylaw?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, my understanding was it was through the stages of the inspection process that it was determined that, again, based on the grading and the built form of the building, that it was actually a balcony and not a deck as defined by the bylaw. The plans didn't indicate, again, the elevations themselves from the front of the lot, or the front of the building to the back of the building. So through the inspection process, that's when that was picked up.
But this inspection process that you're speaking about is what happened in 2019, not what happened in 2016 when they were built, correct?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, that'd be correct. It was after the fact.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so yes, Mr. Flemington, sorry.
I just for, pardon me, an item of clarification from the applicant, just hearing the comments from the town staff, the drawings, I heard you say that you had architectural drawings that were submitted for the permits. Did those architectural drawings, were these the ones that, okay. Just showing that it's on the second.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
I saw several hands. Can I see a show of hands of the interested parties, please? So there's only the two of you. You're in separate addresses, correct? So you'll both be addressing the committee, correct? Okay, so who would like to come first? Ladies first? We do have several letters of objection. We have 4 objection and 1 concern on record, so I'm not sure if yours is on record.
I'm one of them.
You're one of them?
My name is Valerie Laplante.
Okay, so we do have your letter, Ms. Valerie, thank you. Go ahead.
1592 Station Master Lane, and it's on your diagram as RL5. Sorry, RL5.
I'm trying to find you on my,
I back onto units number 14, 15, 13, 14, 15, and 16.
Okay, go ahead.
You covered most of the questions I had regarding the permits and approval of same. And so half of my questions are already answered. So just that I'm clear, the balcony that's built, the quasi-deck, it is built and it's being presented now for approval. Is that correct, Madam Chair?
Well, it's not for approval. There is a variance, so there's a difference between what was built and what should have been built. So that's what they're asking for right now, and that's what constitutes a variance.
Okay. So I noted that the planning services has done an overview of the whole situation. And I know the applicant is asking why. And there was good reasons there which is the overlook conditions closer to the backyard, compounded by the number of units with more utilization, and this would result in additional noise, overlook, privacy impacts on the rear yards of our homes. In addition, there is little or no existing vegetation to mitigate any of this, and this is quotations from the planning services. The planning services, in their opinion, stated that the variance does not maintain the intent of the official plan, as the proposal is not compatible with the surrounding neighborhood. And this is as per RM1 zone and the bylaw policies. Of course, if this was approved, the proposed balcony projections would create negative impacts on the dwellings, our dwellings, in the terms of overlook, noise, privacy within the context of the surrounding area. They even went further to state in their opinion that the variance should not be supported, as it does not satisfy the 4 tests of the Planning Act, and I think that's the answer to this situation. I think, and I believe, that there's no fix, and but to go ahead and not approve the extension and to have the current balconies removed if no permits is in place or the building inspection was not completed or approved. And that's it for me.
Okay. Are there any questions of Ms. Valerie at this time? I see none. Okay, thank you for your submission.
Thank you.
Go ahead, sir.
Right, so I'm speaking on behalf of 1596, 1600, and 1604.
1596, 1600, and 1604.
So we dropped off letters along with certain backgrounds.
Yes, we do have those on
Even the
record.
pictures.
And we have the pictures, yes.
So each of us, so we second.
Can you just state your name and address for the record?
So I'm the owner resident of 1604 Station Master. My name is Safdar, last name is Akbari.
Akbari, Mr. Akbari, thank you.
Welcome. So we, as the owner of 1592 pointed out, we all 4 units back onto these properties. I think the first concern we have is how this was approved in 2017 without our, without asking us or without consulting us, because these are elevated decks and they're looking onto our property. So technicalities are obviously apart, but we felt that, and I was the one who actually called into town of Oakville then and was told that it was a decision already taken. There was nothing that could be done about it. I objected to it, and I have emails to prove that. So, because these are elevated decks, and when we bought these properties, these decks did not exist. So obviously, we think, each of us 3 residents, owners, think that it does impact, these decks do impact negatively the financial value of our property by way of intrusion to privacy and all of that. So that is, and I've attached to some pictures there also. One of the things I was noticing is that if you look at from Google Earth, it is the decks, the backyard to these properties, the condominiums, is pretty small. And if deck was to go any further, it will constitute a significant portion of that backyard, and it will actually start to further infringe into or onlook into a backyard. So we're quite
I just want to
concerned about
clarify
this.
that they're not seeking they're not going to build further onto these decks.
So the size is
The-
going to remain the same.
It's just a technical variance to allow the decks to remain, right? Mr. Hassan?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, the variance is constructed in a way that it would allow the existing decks to remain, but the units, I think it's 15 to 21 would be permitted decks of the same size.
And there's no way to mitigate that, so it would go across the board?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, it would apply to units 15 to 21. That's the way the application was structured.
Okay. But I'm looking at the picture now, and I see what you were talking about in terms of the error. The 2 with the current decks, yes, they have a an above-grade basement, a walkout. But the ones adjacent to them, those ones don't seem to be a walkout basement. But they don't have, were those patio doors, I guess, put in after the fact?
Well, through you, Madam Chair, I believe the patio doors on the second floor are put in to replace windows to access the balconies.
I see, okay. So this came as part of the entire construction.
Because through you, Madam Chair, a balcony, again, would be permitted. It's just the variance for the projection of the balcony, which is the variance itself.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Go ahead, Ms. Murray.
Through you, Madam Chair, to the town staff. The first picture and the variance and the parties representing the variance constitute 2 decks. When I conducted my site visit, there was a third one that looked fairly new. How did that one get approved? Like, wouldn't potentially something have been caught when the third one went up and got a permit?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, I'm unfortunately not too sure which one was caught and which one triggered, again, the rationale for the variances themselves. My understanding was that inspections were done, and it was determined that the decks that were applied for were considered balconies, and they projected beyond the maximum 1.5 projection.
I have a thought, I can't. Any further questions? Okay, sorry, we interrupted you, so go ahead and finish your,
So I'll just finish by saying that on behalf of the 3 residents, owners, we object and oppose. And in fact, we would like, as was mentioned earlier, to hopefully take these extensions down. Because I bought this property in 2016, my neighbor at the same time. There was nothing like that. There were just windows on the second, like the upper floor. And then next thing we know is next year, these patio doors were put up with the deck, and we also noticed, and it's mentioned in one of the letters, that some of these places have, like, they keep barbecues upstairs, like on these decks, and these are wooden decks, so we think that that's a hazard in itself. But,
Okay.
We don't know what bylaws are, but, we see that.
Any questions of Mr. Akbari at this time? Or items of clarification? No. Okay, thank you, Mr. Akbari. We appreciate your submission.
Thanks a lot.
Mr. Graves and Ms. Phillips, this is your time to respond to everything you've heard.
Yeah, so I first would like to thank my neighbors for coming and expressing their concerns over the variance, because it is important that they do express that. But I would like to identify a lot of the questions that were brought up specifically in regards to asking of the town. The first of which is the questions regarding inspection timelines. So we did have our permits approved and build began. We did have inspectors from the town come out during the actual process of the build. So there were people who came in, and they came in through the home, through the front door, down the stairs, out the back door that way, and they also went around the sides of the condominiums. So there were actually town inspectors who inspected at the time of build. The issue is ours were built first, so the first 2 that are at issue here, and then the third one, which was brought up, that you can see in the photographs that is of a smaller size, that was applied for and built after the fact. And that is where we believe it was noticed that the issue in terms of how far out they project was discovered by the town. And also there was a question in terms of the actual terms of the variance for all of those stretch of the buildings. I'm not sure if it's possible where we could amend at this juncture to mitigate the issues that our neighbors bring in, where it is just ours are approved as built.
Well, I had that question myself for Mr. Hassan. Considering the mistakes that have happened, is there a way where we can maintain the as-built form, and then anything further to be constructed in accordance with the bylaw as it stands right now?
Well, through you, Madam Chair, if the committee chooses to approve the application, I believe it would have to be amended to strike that the balconies or the application would apply to units 15 to 21 and strictly only units 20 and 19 for the existing balconies. Just so it's not across the board.
Yes, and I would agree with that. I just, we have to take that into committee for discussion, but I just need to know where you stand on that first. Okay. Are there any items or questions or clarification before we take this matter into committee of Mr. Graves and Ms. Phillips? Mr. Talowski, you, okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Mr. Talowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Hassan, can you clarify for me, is the town, 'cause I think earlier you said it may have been misrepresented. So is the town admitting it made a mistake, or is the town claiming the application was misrepresented at the time?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, through my discussions with other staff, it was an error in reviewing the application based on the materials that were submitted depicting a deck, whereas it really should have been considered a balcony.
That still doesn't answer the question.
Does not answer
I'm
the
still
question.
confused. Okay.
Yeah, I don't understand when you say the drawings that were submitted depict a deck. It shows it, it doesn't suggest it's a walkout, it doesn't suggest anything on the drawings that we've been provided with, so I'm struggling with how the town's coming to that conclusion.
Yeah, well, I guess through you, Madam Chair, for lack of a better term, I can't really speak for building or zoning staff, but from a planning standpoint, the comments would remain the same in terms of the impact that we see being, I guess, projected onto the neighboring properties in terms of the overlook.
Okay, notwithstanding the drawings, we've also heard that there's been inspections. So whether or not the drawings were misleading or were misread or misinterpreted, putting that aside, there have been inspections. So can you confirm that building permit staff have gone to the sites, they've done their inspections, so they've had an opportunity to see this firsthand?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, that's all been done, yeah.
Okay, so then we have that confirmation then. Go ahead, Ms. Murray.
A couple of questions through you, Madam Chair, to town staff. The drawings that I have don't depict the third floor of the townhouse. It shows the walkout and the second floor, and I'm wondering if confusion was because of that particular drawing that I refer to on my package. That's part one of my question. And the second question I have, if we were to approve 19 and 20, and the third unit of which we don't have I don't have the unit number, I don't know what unit that is, what kind of legal position does it put you in if 3 units in this condo complex have the deck they want and others may not?
Yeah, well, through you, Madam Chair, I believe an application would be required for that one unit that's not named to the application.
Okay, well, we would stipulate that in our conditions, correct? And we would make sure that it's to your satisfaction or to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning. Would that be okay?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, it'd probably be preferable that it's to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning Services.
Okay, very well. So we will take that matter. If you have nothing further to add, we are ready to take this matter into committee.
Good. No,
I
thank
believe
you.
that's it. Thank you.
Okay, very well. Thank you. I'm sorry, sir. The process as we've read in the preamble is explained. You get a chance, they respond, and then we take the matter into committee. We've heard you, and we are going to take everything into account. It's open for discussion. So I've put my thoughts on this forward. Who would like to start the ball rolling on this? Mr. Flemington, go ahead.
Madam Chair, excuse me. Having conducted my site visit and having reviewed the applicant's written submission, as well as the town's written staff report, which I note is not in support of, and also having taken into account the presentations made this evening by the applicant, as well as the 2 members illustrating their objection to the application, also representing others in the neighborhood. If I have this correct, I believe we had 4 letters in opposition to this application. And
One letter for concern. They had issues with the taxes or.
right.
Yeah.
I just want to note, or I want to speak to the fact that I take issue from the comments made in the presentation whereby the 2 people that are on this application having had architectural drawings done and submitted it to the town to get permits completed, having inspections done on the premises showing that, you know, in person as well, showing that this was on the 2nd level of the premises. I take issue that permits were given and that the applicant informed us that there was actually 3 permits that were provided. They did reduce the size of the extension from the premises from 9 meters, I believe, down to 4.5 meters, in order to comply with what they had asked for in the permits. So I take issue with that being provided. The inspections found no issues, and now it's come to fruition that they needed to apply for a variance due to it may be the 3rd deck being built. So I want to say that this application be approved. However, I do want to amend it. And I want to amend it for the units that have presented tonight. So, sorry, which units are they? 19 and 20. And I believe there's one other one that.
But that one will have to have a separate application.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for this application, I want to amend it that it only applies to units 19 and 20 because they thought that everything that they had applied for was approved. I do want to recognize as well the people who came out to object. As you heard from your neighbor, they agree as well that you should be able to convey your objection, but in their opinion, they followed the process that is there for people who are constructing on their premises. So we are, you know, reducing this to these units. And I know that we should have some conditions.
Mr. Hassan, we're going to need your assistance with that so that it's worded correctly for both 19 and 20, and then the 3rd application that you're in anticipation of, as well as the
It's
remaining
already
units.
built. It's already built.
Yeah, but he says that it needs to be under a separate application. Did I understand you correctly?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, the application itself, again, if you look at the location of the land, refers to units 20 and 19, but the description of the application is for it to apply across the board for units 15 to 21. So as the committee discussed, it's really the 2 balconies that are being discussed tonight that would be subject to the drawings.
Okay.
Okay.
And how did you want us to factor in the one that's already built, the 3rd one?
They have to reapply, so.
Okay, they would have to reapply.
So based on that, I mean, these structures are already built, and they were built with permits being provided as approved by the town. So I'm going to move in favor of the motion as amended for units 19 and 20, that this application be approved.
Is there a discussion on this recommendation? Mr. Talowski? The conditions are in, there are no conditions? Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I hate the fact that I can't support my colleague's motion. I really feel for the applicants, but unfortunately, the town made a mistake, not the 5th test of a minor variance. If they hadn't been built, which is the way the committee needs to look at this, I don't believe the variance would be approved. I don't believe it's a minor variance in this situation to change the nature of a small balcony to a larger deck and increase the usage of it. And if this gets approved tonight and every other unit owner in the condo came in, this committee would have to vote the same way because they're finding that it does meet the test of the Planning Act. So, Madam Chair, this is the least favorite position I've probably taken in 15 years here. I really feel for the applicant. They built in accordance with the permit issued, but when I'm being asked to apply the 4 tests of the Planning Act, I can't find that it meets the intent of the bylaw or that it's desirable, regardless of whether they're built or not. So unfortunately, I can't support the motion.
Yeah, it's a tough one. Any further comments? Mr. Hardcastle, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have a whole lot to add. Again, Mr. Tulowski has said it well. I'm compassionate to the circumstances of the property owners, but I can't get past the real tangible impact that this will have on the adjacent properties within the condominium development, as well as the owners to the rear. So I also will not be able to support the motion on the floor.
Any further comments? Okay, let's take it to a vote. The motion before us is to approve this application as amended to only include units 19 and 20. And we had discussed something about it to be to the satisfaction of the, no? No, okay. All right, all those in support? Okay, all those opposed? Okay, and I'm going to abstain. Okay. All right. So the motion has failed. Now we need another motion. It's all yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This time I'm unhappy to present this motion that the application be denied, finding that it doesn't meet the 4 tests of the Planning Act for largely the reasons I've already given. I don't believe it's appropriate or in keeping with the bylaw to extend the decks in the nature that it creates the use that was intended. So I would move the application be denied.
Okay, so the application is to be denied. All those in support? Okay, and all those opposed? Okay. Your application has been denied. Okay, moving on. Application CAV 116 at 130 Gloucester Avenue. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Jarrett McNamee of AJM Designs. I'm the designer and the agent for the clients, Mr. and Mrs. Butler at 130 Gloucester Avenue.
Sorry, what was your last name again?
McNamee.
McNamee, okay, thank you. Allow me just to canvass the room. Who is here for application CAV 116 of 2019 at 130 Gloucester Avenue? Any interested parties? Okay, none, I see none, thank you. Mr. McNamee, this is an application for the existing carriage house to remain, and your property is within the Heritage Register. We've done our site visits. We're familiar with your application. This is your time to take us through your application if you wish to do so. Are there any questions of Mr. McNamee at this time or items of clarification? I see none. If you have anything further to add?
Just in, not really. If you guys just, like, we're just trying to sort of not touch the existing carriage house and keep intact, that's all.
Okay, very well. Thank you for your submissions. If you have nothing further to add, then we can take this matter into committee.
Sure.
Okay, who would like to move a motion? Go ahead, Mr. Hardcastle. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having undertaken my site visit, reviewed the materials, the written submissions from the staff, the comments from the applicant, I'm satisfied that the requested variances conform to the four tests of the Act. Accordingly, I'll put forward a motion of approval, and that motion should be subject to two conditions. The first being that the existing carriage house be permitted in general accordance with the site plan and elevation drawings reference number 3, dated August 2, 2019, and that the approval will expire within 2 years of the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued.
Thank you, Mr. Hardcastle. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved. Thank you. Application CAV 117 of 2019 at 68 Barringham Drive.
Good evening, it's John Wilmot, the agent for our clients, Mr. Cui.
Good evening, Mr. Wilmot. Who is here for application CV 117 of 2019 at 68 Barringham Drive? Okay, you're in opposition? Okay. Will you all be addressing the committee, or do you have one of you representing the group? Okay. Oh, yes, we have one letter of opposition on record. Hold on, I will confirm. So we have the one letter, but your email might have come in a little late, but that's okay. You're here to speak to it, correct? All right. All right, Mr. Wilmot, will you please take us through your application, and then we'll give the neighbors a chance to address the committee.
Of course, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let's get this straight here. Okay, so we have a proposed house on a lot that's rather large. We have a curvature in the streetscape that has created a situation where we would like to obtain a variance for the front yard setback. Essentially, we are trying to keep within the fabric in terms of the footprint and the location of the property. There is no variance for lot coverage, and there's no variance for floor area. We've applied for 3 variances. The first that I'd like to talk about is the number 3, actually, because it sets the setback here on the screen at 18.63. The bylaw requires that the setback be 1 meter less than is legally existing at currently, and that is this. It's a little bit it's grayed out, but it's this line here, and so the portion that is actually exceeding that is this piece right here, and a portion of the overhang. So I would suggest that that indeed is minor in nature. It actually follows this line follows the curvature in the road, and that's why we have that situation there. The next is I'll go back to number 1. This is I think, very technical in nature. It's a little bit odd, but planning staff or zoning have deemed this little section here, which is essentially a canopy support, as part of the garage. And that's creating the issue of the garage projecting further than what is allowed, which is 1.5 meters. I would suggest that the actual projection from the front wall of the house, which is here, to the garage, which is here, is only 0.84 meters. So I think that's a technical variance. And the last one is the dwelling depth. The dwelling depth here, the maximum is 20 meters. We're requesting 23.24. If you look at the dwelling depth of the actual house, we're at about 17.84, and that's taken from here to here. To here. And that's the actual house. The projection of a covered porch, it's very open and without a lot of structure and without a lot of mass, is projecting out the back and is creating the increased dwelling depth. I might also add that the projection of the canopy, this small piece here supporting, is also contributing to the dwelling depth. I'm just going to throw up another quick drawing. So this drawing we prepared is a smaller scale so that we could relate the structure to the other houses on either side. And I want to make note that the dwelling depth of this house, and I don't have the actual dimension, but I did, is actually longer than the one that's being proposed. And this is all structure, not a open covered patio. It is actually set back from the rear lot line closer than the one that we're proposing, which I might add does meet the bylaw. And on the other side, the dimension from here to here and here to here are very close. So lastly, I'd like to point out that if you see in the curvature of the road, the setbacks are very close. So those are elements that we went through with planning staff to see if they would agree with us that that is an appropriate setback for this particular lot, and of course they've supported it. I think that probably describes everything I wanted to explain, so I'd be happy to answer your questions or listen to the neighbors.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Olmott. Are there any questions or items of clarification at this time? We see none. Okay, we'll listen to the neighbors and then you can address their concerns. Who would like to address us? Good evening. Your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Madam Chair and committee members. My name is Donna Scott. I live at 60 Berringham Drive, which is the house directly to the south of the house under application. And I apologize that I'm not really sure if I'm presenting a minor objection to the variance. What I'm objecting to is the taking down of substantially large trees. Is this the right place to do that? Okay. There's a large, I would say heritage size black walnut tree in the center of the back garden that will be removed in order to accommodate this new house, and also a very large oak tree on the side of where the driveway is proposed.
Okay. In terms of the trees that comes with the site plan process, so trees, drainage, all these things are dealt with through that process, and you being in that area, I mean, they will see what to approve and what not to approve, and it's on record that you disagree with it, but at the end of the day, it's dealt through the site plan process. As far as we're concerned, we are here to look at the variances before us, which is the projection of the private garage and the dwelling depth and the front yard setback, and how they affect you as a neighbor.
Okay.
So if you have no objections of the variances, that's good news to us, because then we've one less objection,
Well, I suppose my objection would be the placement.
the placement.
I know one of the variances is the setback, the increased setback from the road.
Right. Well, Mr. Wilmot will comment on that, and I think he's already done some of that already, and explained how that came about. Are there any questions of Ms. Scott at this time, or items of clarification? I see none. So if that's all, we'll listen.
Is there any course of action to preserve these trees
The
at all?
site plan, through the site plan process. Yeah.
Because I did come to the town hall, I think it was Thursday of last week, to speak to somebody, and really couldn't get much help in that regard.
Before you leave, maybe Jasmina can point you in the right direction, but you can get that information. It's not a problem.
Okay.
Okay, thank you for your submission. Ma'am?
Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name's Diane Burton. I'm a friend of Donna Scott, and I've spent time in her backyard looking at the trees that are going to be coming down in the adjacent property if this site plan, if this is approved. I wasn't aware that the tree issue happened at the site plan, so I suppose that's over with, is it?
No, it's still continuing. Mr. Hassan, is the site plan process completed for this?
No, through you, Madam Chair, this application and the property itself would be subject to a development engineering site plan approval. So the arborist reports and those types of things that you noted in terms of drainage and grading would all be looked at through that process. And typically it would be applied for after the variance is confirmed, just so the siting of the building has been identified.
Okay, very well, thank you.
Then my one objection would be the criteria for the application is, does it maintain the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw? I believe that these are not minor variances when you consider the depth into the backyard for where the trees will be removed. If you're going to ask for variances to that extent in the back, then shouldn't the bylaws be changed? My impression is the variances being asked in the Committee of Adjustment now are getting larger and larger. And I believe that in this case, it's not a minor change. And we need a change to the bylaw of 2014-014 if we're going to keep this up. We have a climate emergency now. As of July 19, Oakville declared a climate emergency. And I've looked unsuccessfully for information on how many tree removal permits have been issued by the town of Oakville over the past 5 years since this bylaw was in place. I've looked for information as to the number of trees over 100 years that have been moved throughout the town via Committee of Adjustment, and the loss of open private green space to overall incremental changes to build overlay via this bylaw, minor. I'm requesting now the Committee of Adjustment is operating under a climate emergency, and you should be assessing this information before you continue to grant exemptions by changing this by minor variances. I think it's adding up to huge variances in the bylaw purpose, and for this reason, I'm asking that number 68 Berringham be refused. And I think it's just not a matter of this one. You have to start adding up all these small variances, and you need to get a change to the bylaw that you're going to change the proportion. It was established in the bylaw, the proportions would be so much overbuild to green space This is all changed when you add up all these incremental changes. And then that's the reason I'm asking you in particular to refuse 68 Barrington. And then perhaps we must go to council and ask for clarification of the implication of all the Committee of Adjustment decisions over the past 5 years. Does it really fulfill the purpose that that bylaw was put forward for? Thank you. That's all I've got to say.
Thank you, Ms. Barton. Before you leave, can you just state your address for the record, because the Secretary Treasurer did not capture that?
Oh, 2106 Brays Lane, Oakville.
2106 2106 Brays Lane?
Yes.
In Oakville. And it's Barton, B-A-R-T-O-N.
B-U-R-T-O-N.
B-U-R-T-O-N.
Yes,
Thank
Diane
you.
Burton.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure. Mr. Hassan, we have a question for you.
Madam Chair, through you to town staff, to the best of your knowledge at this time, out of that climate emergency that was declared in Oakville, is there any direction that has trickled down, or any a town directive that has been issued with regards that may affect this application or variance?
Through Madam Chair, not this application in particular. I know commentaries to be added to the larger scale development applications such as rezoning, official plan, subdivision, condominium application. Those comments would be involved in those consultation processes and reports, but not for variances.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wilmot, the floor is yours to address the concerns of your neighbors.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I'd like to say in general, we like to preserve trees as well. It is within the property owner's right to apply for tree removals. This application is about a zoning issue, not about trees. However, I'd like to point out that we've actually taken into account the preservation of trees. First of all, the one next to the owner at number 60 is on the line. This here, dark line, dotted line here, represents the building envelope. Those are the setbacks by which we have to apply without variance. Those are the as of right. And while we could have designed a house to come over here, I say could, we didn't, because we had an arborist report and we were respecting the setback for that tree. Now that's somewhat straightforward because it's on the lot line, and absolutely we wanted to preserve that tree. The other one is on this side of the property, and we've actually gone to great lengths to set back the garage further. My client would have preferred to build it out to the as-of-right setback, but we've set it back so that, again, through the arborist report, that we are back a safe distance, and that tree can be preserved. Of course, with all new development, sometimes trees are removed for that. There's mitigation processes to replace trees and things like that. And certainly this whole application will go through the development engineering site plan. I would sort of close here by suggesting that I'm not sure that the objectors and the neighbors have explained how the building from a zoning perspective and the minor variance perspective is going to impact them. I think while there is a nice tree, it is we will be applying to remove it to accommodate a pool and all the things that normally go into a backyard. And which is another reason we're asking for a variance for the front yard setback, and that is to push it forward a little bit so that there is a significant sized backyard. and that it's consistent with the backyards of the neighbors. And so I hope that answers the question, but perhaps there's questions again.
Thank you, Mr. Wilmot. Are there any questions or items of clarification at this time? I see none. If you have nothing further to add, we are prepared to take the matter into
Thank you.
committee. Okay. Who would like to move a motion? Go ahead, Ms. Murray, thank you.
Madam Chair, having conducted my site visit, reviewed the applicant's written submission as well as the town's written staff report, which I note that the staff is in support of, having also taken into account the comments presented by the applicant, as well as questions and submissions from the public, thank you. Noting that there were some oral objections with regards to the variance. I am satisfied that the minor variance application meets all 4 tests under the Planning Act. I'm prepared to make a motion to approve the application for variance subject to the following conditions, which are that the dwelling be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan and elevations dated August 20th, 2018, and that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction, and in cases where a building permit is not required, that the proposed scope of work has not been fully completed.
Thank you, Ms. Murray. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay. The application has been approved.
Thank you.
So the next item on our agenda is CAV 118 of 2019 at 64 First Street.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Gus Ricci. I'm the architect and agent for the application before you this evening at 64 Rebecca Street.
Good evening, Mr.
Sorry,
Ricci.
64 First Street. My address is 64 Rebecca Street.
Good evening, Mr. Ricci. Who is here for application CAV 118 of 2019 at 64 First Street? I see none. Go ahead, Mr. Ricci. We have the application. We've done our site visits for this new proposed construction. Is there any thing you'd like to add? Perhaps any questions from the committee members? If there are any items of clarification of Mr. Ricci at this time? I see none, so the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll just give you a general sort of overview of the project, how we've gotten to this stage. Understanding that it is in the 1st and 2nd Street Heritage District. We've had probably at least 3 different contacts and meetings with the Heritage representatives from the Heritage Committee, beginning way back in March 14th, where we showed them the initial sketches, and we were at around 31.8% coverage. Taking their feedback, we went back, we revised the drawings, submitted drawings to them back in May 27th, and actually met with some of the Heritage members, and we were able to reduce the coverage down to 30% approximately, and took the height down to about 10.3. We have since submitted a formal application, and we'll be going to Heritage on October 22nd. As far as additional contact with the town, we sent drawings to planning staff, Mr. Hassan, again, beginning in June. Coverage was at approximately 30%, height was at 10.3. We received some comments back, and comments show concern relating to coverage, width of building, and also possibly height, but that didn't seem to be a huge concern. So again, we went back, looked at the drawings again, made some modifications, and we were able to submit some revised drawings on July the 16th, where we reduced our coverage to 28.8%, which is one of the variances before you this evening. One of the things we did was indulge you with the site plan. One of the concerns that planning staff had was the garage projection. They were concerned that it was essentially in line with the front of the main wall of the house. You'll notice there's a porch at the front, and then there's a porch that's about 7 meters deep, then the main wall of the house. And our garage was originally in line with that main wall. We were able to pull it back about 2 feet to reduce the massing at the front, which was one of the concerns that planning staff had. And we were able to reduce the overall width of the building by approximately 1 foot as well. If you look at the site plan itself, fairly sizable lot. The front yard setback is 7.5 meter requirement, rear is 7.5 as well. Side yard setbacks are 1.2 and 1.2. One of the things that we looked at very carefully was vegetation. There's a lot of nice trees along the southern portion. The grade of the property actually drops down to the south. And in talking to engineers and grading experts, we figured we're going to need that space along the south side for grading and so forth. So we've actually left a substantial amount of space on the south side. You can see where the setback requirement is, but we're well within that. So we were able to make the building a lot more compact that way. We haven't stretched it out across the whole width that's permitted. And one of the other things that we did was to actually tighten up the building with respect to variance for height. You'll notice that we are asking for a variance at 10.35, but the actual height of the building at the front elevation is only at 9.3, which is well below the 10-meter mark. This is a rendering of the front of the building, again in a heritage district, so it was very important to meet the requirements of the heritage, the district plan, the new district plan that came into effect. This is a view looking from the north-south, and then an opposite view, again fitting in with some of the existing vegetation. Our client went around and canvassed quite a few of the neighbors, and I'd like to submit to you letters of support from 49, 71, 77, 46, 52, 72, and 82 First Street, as well as neighbors behind the property at 59, 65, and 69. The final comment I have is just mainly for clarification. The planning staff report, the first paragraph actually refers to a different application, I believe. So I think planning staff can clarify that with you, as well as one of the conditions that's listed in the planning report. Required condition number 1, again, refers to a different heritage permit number that, does not apply to this project. And we would ask that if this this application be approved, we change that to drawings dated August 16th, 2019. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Hassan?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, in regards to the condition itself, that permit number was given to me directly from Heritage Planning staff, so it could be that they perhaps made a mistake in terms of the numbering of the permit itself. For clarification, we can strike the actual permit number itself and just say that the site plan and elevations of the heritage permit to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning Services.
Director of Planning Services. Okay, and Anything, any items of clarifications or questions of Mr. Ricci at this time? Okay, I see none. We'll make that amendment to the conditions. Mr. Ricci,
Thank
if
you.
you're satisfied with that, then we can take the matter into committee.
Yes, I am. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you. Who would like to move a motion? Go ahead, Mr. Flemington.
Madam Chair, having conducted my site visit and having reviewed the applicant's written submission, as well as the town's written staff report, which I note is in support of the application, also having taken into account the presentation made this evening by the applicant's agent, noting that there has been, through meetings with planning, a reduction in the coverage and a reduction in the height, as well as discussions with Heritage. I'm noting that there were 10 written letters of support that have been submitted, and that there were no written objections or oral objections presented this evening. So I'd like to move that the application be approved for, as applied for, with the following conditions: that the dwelling be built in general accordance with the site plan elevation drawings of August 16, 2019, and that it meets the satisfaction of the Director of Planning Services. And secondly, that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction, and in cases where a building permit is not required, that the proposed scope of work has not been fully completed.
Very well. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved.
Thank you.
Yes. Sorry. The next item on our agenda is application CAV 119 at 312 Maple Grove Drive. Good evening.
Good evening. My name's Harry Kalinzakos. I'm the owner, applicant.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Kalinzakos. Who's here for application CAV 119 of 2019 at 312 Maple Grove Drive? Okay, I see none. This is for your proposed addition and renovation to the existing property.
Yes.
So this is your time. We've done our site visits. We're familiar with your application. Is there anything further that you'd like to add or items of clarification?
No, the application, I believe, is fairly clear.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions of Mr. Kalinzakos at this time? Or any items of clarification? I see none. Okay, if you're satisfied with the conditions that town staff have put in, we are ready to take the matter into committee.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Talowski. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, these variances are largely technical in nature. I'll note that we're not increasing any variances, but essentially building on top of an existing situation. Also note that there's no input from the public. With that, Madam Chair, I'd be pleased to recommend that the application be approved as applied for, making it subject to 2 conditions that proceed in general accordance with the drawings dated August 21st, 2019, and that a building permit issue within 2 years.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Talowski. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved. Thank you, sir. Okay. Next item on our agenda is application CAV 120 of 2019 at 1473 Constance Drive.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'd like to defer the application.
Oh, did you not hear us in the beginning when we asked for deferrals?
No, I got here just slightly late due to traffic. I apologize.
Oh, okay. So that's fair. We have comments from staff that are not in support of your application, so I'm
Yes, so
assuming
we're-
that you'd like to go
Yeah,
back.
we want to
and-
go back, address those comments, and address the neighbor's comment that I received yesterday to come back with in front of the committee with a better plan to address all those comments.
Very well. Let me just canvass the room because I have a distinct feeling that some people here are actually here for your application because we did receive some letters of opposition. So who is here for application CV 120 of 2019 at 1473 Constance Drive? Okay, so those, okay. All right. So the applicant would like a deferral. All those in support? Okay, application
Thank
has
you
been
very much.
deferred. You'll see the secretary treasurer when you're ready.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Application CAV 007 of 2018, deferred from January 30th of 2018 at 421 Lees Lane.
Good evening,
Good
Madam
evening.
Chairperson,
Mr. Kieran.
members of the committee. My name is Joris Kieran. I'm the agent for the applicant,
Okay.
and my address is 11 Bronte Road, Unit 31 in Oakville.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kieran. Who is here for application CAV 007 of 2018 at 421 Lees Lane? Jackpot, okay. You're here in opposition, I'm assuming, and would you like to address the committee? Or you're here for to get more information?
If I could clarify, I've had discussions with the neighbors,
Okay.
and we've come to an agreement, so I can explain to the committee what we've come to, and they are prepared to withdraw their opposition with a few small changes.
Very well, okay,
Okay.
let's proceed.
Okay. Still getting used to this. Is this the Zoom? No, that's up and down for the... Is there a Zoom function on the,
Yes, you just have to ask, can we zoom in, please?
or zoom out a little
Or
bit?
zoom
Yeah, it's
out?
pretty good now, actually.
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
Okay. I just want to touch on a few points. The planning staff is now supporting this application after we made several changes to address their concerns. When the circulations went out, we did receive two letters of objection. One was from a Miss Clugston, and I have not been able to speak to her, but her letter says that she does not have she does not oppose this request. It was more of a general objection to development in the area,
overbuilding.
it seems. But I did reach out to the neighbors immediately to the, I guess, southwest, I believe, at 415, and I spoke with Mr. and Mrs. Gibbs, just to understand what their primary concern was, and they explained to me that it was the overlook from the second floor and from the house facing their house, the side facing their house. So I wanted to explain to them that, and they didn't have the benefit of seeing the floor plan, so the windows that are in fact on that side are, and I'll just go to it in my drawing. So this is the elevation here that's facing their side yard, their back side yard and rear yard, and their concern was with these windows here and the overlook that could potentially create, because right now there's a single-story dwelling there. So I reviewed the floor plan with them to demonstrate that this here is a laundry room window, and it's about 5.5 feet off the ground. So it starts at about 5.5 feet. So that would make it almost impossible to look down into their yard because of just the sight line. And then these windows here, they're basically inside a stairwell. And I believe the committee has the benefit of the floor plan, so you can see that this is a stairwell. So this isn't a room where somebody can sit and look down. Up here, it's all open space, essentially. And then this window here is for the great room, and it is about 7.5 feet to 8 feet off the ground. So again, not something that can create an overlook issue. So after I explained that, they were, I think it relieved their concern, and they said they were willing to withdraw their objection if we agreed to apply frosting or sandblast coating to these windows here, which would make them opaque, but still let light in. My client has agreed to that, so not sure how you want to record that, but we're prepared to make that change tonight and add that to the proposal. And they are here, obviously, and they can confirm that if need be to the committee.
Very well. Well, this is live and it's on record, so even if it's not incorporated in the actual conditions,
Yes.
you know, it's on record that
Yeah,
you've
and
agreed
that's
to that.
what I explained to them as well, yeah.
Okay. Are there any questions of Mr. Kieran at this time? You kind of scared me when you said you had minor changes, because I thought,
Uh-oh.
no, you're not going to change the variances on me again.
No.
Any items of clarification? Are you satisfied? You do not need to address the committee, if you need to? Okay, then you're fine. Who would like to move a motion? If you're satisfied with everything, then we can take the matter into committee, and I'll let whoever's moving the motion to decide whether they're going to incorporate that into the conditions or not.
Fair, yeah, I'm just here to answer questions beyond this point.
Very well. Mr. Talowski?
Madam Chair, just to give the residents maybe a little more security, because reading it into the motion doesn't really do anything if the applicant decides not to comply. Just wondering, Mr. Kieran, if you'd like to write frosted glass where you've agreed to frost it and ask the committee to accept the revised elevation.
Yeah, sure, I'm willing to do that, yep.
And
Okay.
that way we can
Yep.
approve in general accordance with the drawings provided.
Very well. Okay. So you can do that.
I will do that before I leave.
Mr. Talowski, do you want to move the motion since you have the floor anyways?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chair, I'll move that the application be approved as applied for. I'm always happy to see the residents and the applicants be able to work out their differences before it gets up to an approval and appeal situation. I find that the application meets the 4 tests of the Planning Act and don't find that there'll be any adverse impacts resulting from the variance requested. And I would make that approval subject to that development proceeding in general accordance with the drawings as amended. Sorry, the drawings dated August 13th and the elevations as amended on August 24th. And we'll get September, sorry. And we'll get those amended drawings from Mr. Kieran before he leaves, and also that a permit issue within 2 years.
Okay, very well. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. The last item on our agenda tonight is application CAV 097 of 2019, deferred from August the 13th at 1298 Devon Road. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, committee members. Jason Heater, Huether, from Hicks Design Studio.
Good evening, Mr. Heater. Who is here for application CAV 097 of 2019 at 1298 Devon Road? All right, welcome. Are you here in opposition or in support? In opposition. So you would like to address the committee? Yes. Okay, very well. Go ahead, Mr. Heater, the floor is yours, and then we'll give the neighbors a chance to address the committee.
Perfect, thank you. We're here seeking, it's a deferred application. We were in front of you in early August. Through some discussions with planning staff and my client's willingness to look at some alterations in the location of the building, we were able to bring the building forward on the site. This did add to an additional 5th variance. However, we think it was appropriate in order to help establish a correct sort of streetscape and front setback for the property. And then secondarily, it also helped with a condition in the rear of the garage and created a larger courtyard for the neighbor at 1304. So again, the variance for garage is really to look at a tandem depth garage. 2 garage doors from the front, so it does not read as a 3-car garage. The additional depth and storage space is really at the rear of that. Beyond that, the dwelling has been carved out in that back corner to allow for a nice little courtyard behind that garage area. There currently exists a single-story garage back there that's coming down as part of this application. So the new garage, the back of the new garage will actually sit well in front of the back of the existing structure. We're looking for variance for coverage. 1/3 of that variance really relates to this covered porch feature that's on the front. It's not essentially livable space inside, rather a covered entry feature on the front of the house. Again, we're looking to remove coverage by way of removing the garage that's in the rear yard of this house. We feel the coverage is minor in nature. The setbacks, side yard setbacks and rear yard setbacks are larger than what would be required by bylaw, so we don't feel that there exists an overbuild on the site. Front yard setback, again, this was part of the deferral application to drag this forward in alignment with the neighboring properties. Again, also helping relieve that condition in this back corner where the existing garage exists. Residential floor area, we're asking for a minor addition. Much of that relates again to, there's bylaw requirements with areas above garage when it's over 6 meters in height. So these areas would always be included in that residential floor area. The last and final variance for height, we reached out to the planner. It was just brought to our attention that there is a 2-inch discrepancy. So we're looking for 9.17. I have revised drawings. If I could submit those to amend that variance to 9.22, so a difference of 0.05 meters. And again, that height really, the relation of the height, this property drops from back to front. So the average grade calculation at the front midpoint of the lot line is quite a bit lower than what you would read at the front of the house. The true height at the grade level to the front or to the top of the roof would actually be under the 9-meter bylaw requirement. There's a flat roof on top, but it needs a very minor 2-inch slope on it. So it's just to pick that 2-inch slope up.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was 9.17 to 9.22.
That does not affect any other calculations? Go ahead. Oh,
Madam Chair, that would increase the amount of the variance, and I believe that would run afoul of notification requirements. Typically, if one is reducing the degree of the variance, that's acceptable, but whereas somebody would be increasing the amount of the variance, it would require notification again to fulfill the requirements of the Act. So I would have some reservations about this on the floor.
okay. Thank you, Mr. Hardcastle. Mr. Hassan, my next question was going to be whether you were aware of this change and whether it was a,
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, the agent did make me aware that he would be making the, proposal, or making a revised proposal, but there was no plans that were provided, so I didn't have a chance to review anything with urban design staff ahead of the meeting.
okay. So.
And again, I would leave it in your hands. It's not the end of the world. It would require a modification to our trust package when we got to that point in time. I would still seek the 9.17. I just thought I could make it right if there was an opportunity to do so
Yeah.
on the floor.
Like Mr. Hardcastle indicated, it just opens a whole slew of things for
Sure.
us in terms of the bylaw and our representation
And
to the
I do not
outer-
want to do that, so.
Yes. So, and no matter how minor it is in
I
nature, it
understand.
still becomes a big headache. So
Yeah.
I would prefer that we just keep it as is.
Please do so. Yep.
Okay. Are there any further questions of Mr. Heater or items of clarification at this time? Okay, I see none. I'll invite the neighbors to address the committee, and then you'll have a chance to respond to their concerns.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is what, for the 9.22? Okay, we're not doing it anymore, so it doesn't matter. Okay. Good evening.
Good evening, hi.
Your name and address for the record, please?
Okay, I'm trying to put something on the screen.
Oh, we'll get to
Louise-
that.
Yeah, okay.
If you can just
Louise-
speak into the microphone.
Louise Kelly,
Okay.
1304 Devon Road.
1304 Devon Road. Okay, Ms. Kelly. If you just put it, yeah, see, if you just put it on there, you can move it as you wish.
Okay, perfect, thank you,
Okay.
thanks. So we are the resident on the east side of the property. And this just this is where our house is, and it ends here. And the new property, in terms of the variances, the variance number 4, I'm going to say is important to us because that's the one that moves the property forward. And without it, the back of the house, it's a 10-foot wall from the edge of our property. Here, I'll show you on this. So the red is about what, with the variance number 4, that will be where the edge of the garage will be. And then without it, and then the yellow markings, that's where the end of the house will be. But if you sort of don't approve variance number 4, so if the setback on the street, then it would be back by 20 feet from the back of our house. And then, so that was sort of important to us we wouldn't be in favor of the other variances if variance 4 isn't approved. I don't know if that makes sense. It's sort of conditional on that one being approved. And when we had spoken to Mr. Hooter? Yeah, we had sort of talked about it because the house is so plain, and we'd asked if there was any way for the massing to be decreased. So sort of one of the options that had come up was moving the house forward so that there's less, the red line's about the 10-foot mark, so that's all the massing. But we've also asked if there's any way, we'd asked if he could look into other ways, but he didn't change the building design. But we're wondering if maybe with some kind of landscaping or something as well. I don't know if you need any of these pictures back again.
Have your letter indicating
Okay.
that you would
Yeah,
be
and I'm just
interested in
reiterating
extra
those
screening.
things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Are there any questions of Ms. Kelly at this time? Okay. If that's your submission, we'll give Mr. Heater a chance to respond, and then we'll take the matter into committee.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Just quickly, yes, we certainly do agree that the variance number 4 is both appropriate and required for this dwelling. It was a difficult, given that we've already carved out the back corner of this property, back in this area, we've already carved out the back corner of that house. And then we've also limited the amount of windows that would face that backyard and back property line. That was sort of done on purpose. We couldn't really shift any more forward. We're trying to leave tree number 2 right here intact and not affect it. We feel that shift in general alignment has helped out the situation quite significantly in that rear yard.
You have some cedar hedging that you have on the side.
There is currently an existing cedar hedge that is being maintained.
It's going to remain.
Yeah, yeah. And as part of, I mean, as my client will want this landscaped appropriately as part of the DESP application, because there is the removal of a tree in the rear yard, they are asking for replacement trees. So I see no reason that something nice couldn't be done in that back corner as well to offer a little further screening.
Okay. Are there any further questions of Mr. Ritter at this time, or items of clarification? Okay. So for the benefit of the neighbor, there is a cedar hedge right there that the applicant's saying that will be maintained, and there will be, I guess, tree number 6 is that it? Or is that a 6?
The big tree out front, tree number 2 is
No,
remaining.
no,
Tree
on
number
the
6
side.
over here.
Yeah.
Yeah, 6 and 7 are not being touched whatsoever. Yeah.
So I think
Neither
that
are the ones in the
addresses
rear.
your concern for screening in that area?
Well,
Oh.
those trees are both on our property.
Oh, yes, that's the front. I was looking at it backwards. I apologize.
Yeah, so our concern is that if, to the extent that the variances that increase the size of the house are approved, which imposes new sightlines on our backyard, we would ask that the neighbor put some landscaping or trees in the area where the existing framed garage is. 'Cause
Okay.
that will help mitigate us staring at that massive wall, right?
Okay. Mr. Heater, can you clarify for me if you're going to extend the landscaping?
Yeah, I mean, I have no reason to believe that my client would not sort of look at doing multiple plantings in this sort of area here, just as long as there was access for a lawnmower around that corner.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you for that. Are there any questions or items of clarification? We're ready to take this matter into committee if you are.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, who's ready to move a motion? Go ahead, Mr. Hardcastle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having undertaken my site visit and reviewed the materials and heard the input from both the agent for the owner as well as from the neighbors, I'm satisfied that the requested variances conform to the 4 tests, and I'm satisfied that there's reasonable opportunity for mitigative measures to address some of the concerns of the adjacent property owner. So I'll put forward a motion of approval, subject to 2 conditions. The first being that the dwelling be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan and elevations. Reference number 2, August 16th, 2019. And that the approval will expire within 2 years of the date of the decision if a permit's not been issued.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hardcastle. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? Okay, I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. We have minutes to move for September the 10th. Go ahead, Ms. Murray moves the minutes. And motion for adjournment. Mr. Hardcastle got it. We are adjourned at 8:48.